streaming to go live. Okay, I am. Oh, there we go. Boom. All right. Are you ready, sir?
Yep.
All right. All right, folks, we're back after a quick break. During the break there, you listened to a promo from Heath and Jamie Britt of the E14 podcast, a couple of active duty Navy sailors down in Louisiana who are doing some incredible work in the podcast realm. They're very a niche show talking to sailors, about sailors, and for sailors. He's got this great 4-part series so far about making the anchor. I forget what the name of it's called. Definitely worth checking out. Also, they're some of the hardest working folks on Twitter that you will ever find. I'm not sure how they do it. I am amazed. I get more notifications on a daily basis from them than anybody else, and it's insane. They're animals. They're crushing the game. Actually, I get to join them and chat with them here in just a couple of days. Looking forward to that too. But go check them out. E14 podcast. Heath and Jamie Britt. They have over 40 years of combined naval service and have a hell of a show. They get great guests, and it's just a good time. So go listen to them wherever you find your podcast stuff. All right, Jesse. Here we go.
Ready to go.
All right. It would work better if I unmuted your microphone, though.
Ready to go.
Yeah, right. Okay. There's too many buttons to push. Oh, my God.
I'll just mouth the rest of the podcast.
Yeah. I mean, you're on camera, so we can read it. We'll be good. All right. So when we left off, we were talking about people. We kind of stopped talking right around the von Braun and the Mittelbau, the V2 rocket thing. There's more to the V2 rocket story than in Bavaria and Germany. And you brought up a great story here that I'd like for you to share with us, if you could, please.
Yeah, sure. So, like, initially, like, I mean, there's a lot of, like I said, like, morality ambiguity as far as, like, war crimes with us, other countries, like, what's right, what's wrong. Namely, a lot of people are still opposed to us using the atomic bomb on Japan. But one story that she highlighted was around this time, I think it was in 1945, shortly after the war ended, a German Nazi was actually captured in a submarine shortly or a little bit off the coast, east coast of New Hampshire and Portsmouth. His name was Dr. Heinzel Schlick. Within this vessel in the submarine, he had V1, V2 rocket drawings. Now, namely, I said, like the initial onset of Operation Paperclip was to get these drawings, these V2 rockets. Like that was like the onset of it, and then everything else developed from there. So,
which those were all hidden in a cave.
Yes.
And only like 2 people knew about it.
Right. So like we as a country were like, all right, well we've got ours, and we presumed like, all right, well then Russia's probably got theirs as well, but we didn't really take into account Japan as well. And when they found these V1, V2 rocket drawings, it was also found he had stealth technology drawings and also 1,200 pounds of uranium oxide, which is a key component in the atomic bomb. And at this point, we were already convinced. And like I said, this is before the atomic bomb is when we caught this guy. We're like, dude, we're pretty certain that he was on his way to Japan. If not, him or his cohorts had already sold this information to the Japanese. So that's the moral dilemma. Do the Japanese already have these drawings, these technology to build their own atomic bomb? Can they use that? So I mean, it sheds a little more light of like the decision or the ultimatum, be like, yes, we're going to drop these bombs on this country and kill these civilians. So
the web that's woven right around Paperclip and there's a lot of offshoots. A lot of, we go to space because of Paperclip. We do this because of Paperclip. They designed and developed, vaccines and chemical weapons and biological, discoveries, physiology, the realm of physiology, space flight, like what our bodies do at high altitudes. You know what I mean? Those kinds of crazy things, desalinization of water. All these technologies and things kind of came out of Paperclip, and I believe that's where the justification for it all comes from. But in that particular case, if in fact that was one of the motivating factors for us to drop the bomb, the potential that Japan had gotten their hands on it. And Japan was a formidable foe.
Yeah.
Like they put it on us. We didn't walk over top of them. They put up an incredible fight. And so it would be reasonable to believe that we were relatively, I don't want to say scared, but
we're paranoid,
overly cautious.
Sure.
Of their ability to construct weapons, and that would be interesting if there could ever be a connection with, finding this German in the sub with a bunch of information, and then pulling the trigger on Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Right. Like, I mean, I imagine like that had to have gone straight to because he wasn't part of Operation Paperclip. He wasn't somebody that we brought over here. He was just an outlier on the east coast of the U.S. in a submarine that we found him. Like I said, like we had no intention of using him for anything. You know what I mean? Like, so he was a wild card. But like, dude, what was he doing?
I have questions though. How do you find someone in a submarine? You know what I mean? There's got to be more to that story.
No, for sure. Like she didn't elaborate on it, but it was like short, like 2 or 3 paragraph thing in there. I was like,
you just happen to be walking down happen to come across the submarine and walk down the middle, like, oh hey, there's a dude here.
Yeah, man, just go.
What's in the briefcase?
You go surfing, and you're like, oh, what was that? Oh, it's a submarine. Hey,
big fucking fish. Right on. So there's the connection with Paperclip and all these other different things is awesome, and I would be interested to see if there can be that connection between finding this dude and we know that it was technological and weapon superiority, and we kind of mentioned, or I mentioned earlier, there was a seated president who had beef with Paperclip, had a lot of beef with Paperclip, and not necessarily the program, but it was the science that came with it, and that was Eisenhower. And in Eisenhower's farewell address, he mentions being cautious of the scientific elite.
Yes. And he also talks about like technology in a way where like you could draw conclusions to just like Silicon Valley right now, and like their elitist attitude towards the rest of the country and everyone that falls under in lockstep with them as well. Obviously, he wasn't referring to that back then, but you could like if you haven't seen that speech, go YouTube it. Like it's one of the best speeches ever given by anyone in America. Like it's awesome.
Yeah, it's long, crazy long. I was surprised I was reading it. And in the book, she actually mentions, I forget the guy who gets pinged about it. Like it causes him to question the now former president. So he goes to his home after he leaves Washington, to Eisenhower's home, and says, "Hey, what did you mean by this?"
Yeah.
And Eisenhower straight up says, according to this dude, he's talking specifically about von Braun, giving the warning that the scientists will have the power to, if unchecked, basically control everything. And the U.S. war machine was in full swing. Our weapons now were in the Cold War, and we have to beat Russia at everything, and we have to out-defense, and we have to outmaneuver and do all these things. We're building nuclear weapons. We're building all these kind of crazy. It's war. It's going. The military complex is in full swing.
Yeah, like his speech was definitely like remorseful too. Like it had a remorseful tone to it, where it was like almost like he's like, I'm sorry that things are going in the direction that they are, but I literally had no control over it. But you as a people, I'm not telling you specifically what's going on, but just be wary that as a nation, as a people of immigrants coming here trying to make the American dream work, that there's other things at work behind the scenes. So that's what I took from that speech he had. Like it was cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And he knew he had his freaking finger on the pulse, for sure. Yeah. So in 1950, with the onset of the Korean War and Russia on the move to Europe, the U.S. expedited relocation programs under a new name called Accelerated Paperclip, or Project 63. The K list had 150 dangerous scientists on it. It was funded with $1 million to recruit these scientists in America. So even into the 50s, we're still rolling, and we're still getting folks come on over. But let's hit up this last whiskey for the evening if we could.
Yeah.
So this is a new one to me. They all have been new this evening, but this is something that I've had my hands on for a little while now. I was able actually just to secure a single barrel select of this from my local store, the Burlington Wine and Spirits. Love those guys. This isn't that one. This is just the normal one. This is Weller Full Proof, and the reason we're going full proof is because we have full proof of, unlike the MK Ultra, we have full proof that Operation Paperclip is a thing, and so this is what we're going to be drinking. This is the original Weeda Bourbon from William LaRue Weller. This comes out of the Buffalo Trace Distillery. This is their recipe. I forget which number it is. It's the wheated recipe, so instead of rye, it's wheat, and that sits at about, I think it's 72-18, so 72% corn, 18% wheat, and then the rest is malted barley. So it is a bourbon. It is 114 proof, so it's going to be a little hotter, but it should be pretty sweet and incredible.
Yeah, it smells sweeter.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
That's candy.
Straight to the nose.
Licorice, spicy, almost cinnamon. I had to have something else in my mouth that's playing with me, giving me the cinnamon one.
No, I can taste it. There's a bit of a cinnamon to
like
it.
Cinnamon?
Yeah. And you're wrong. You're not wrong.
So Weeda bourbons tend to be sweeter. They tend to be a little more gentle. They don't have that quite zippy, singy like that, because rye gives you that spicy tingle note. This is hot, but it's not. Hot, but not abusive.
No.
That's really good. So that's what this is right here. I have been so super fortunate. These bottles sell for ridiculous secondary market prices. I stumbled upon that one at a local store here. It was one of the big box stores. And so I just right place, right time as the dude was putting it in the cabinet. And I was like, how much? And he told me, I'm like, yeah, I'll take that. And then for the first time ever, I stood in line for a bottle of whiskey. So Burlington,
as opposed to not standing in line? What do
yeah,
you
so this only gets released certain times a year, super allocated, very popular. So they put a notice out the day before saying, hey, 1 o'clock, be down at the store, we're selling this. And so I get down there I think I got down there at about 11:45, and I was number 6 in line. By the time they actually started selling them, the line was through the store, out the door, down the sidewalk. Like there was a lot of people there. So, and it's gone, like it sold out that day. And I think he had 200 some bottles. So it goes, and you were only allowed to get one. So
right. It's like toilet paper,
yeah. Yeah. So yeah, and we got it at retail, so right around $65, which is definitely less than half of what it's going for in most places around. So
nice.
Super, super fortunate. And
the only thing that's cheaper in Massachusetts is that versus like everywhere else.
Yeah,
so, that's nice.
And that's just luck. That is just luck.
That's cool.
That's so good. Oh my God. Okay, so we kind of touched on a little bit the results. What were the results of Paperclip? No shit. What did we get from it? We got space.
Space.
We got space. We got second place for space.
Yeah. Well, we also, like you alluded to earlier, or what you touched on was avionics medicine as well, which leads to our current profession. Like we no doubt would not be here right now today if it wasn't for Operation Paperclip. We'd be whatever 10, 20, 30 years behind. We'd still be using an old school parachute. You know, like I said, like everything that whatever butterfly effect you want to apply to it, like we wouldn't be here doing what we're doing right now without Operation Paperclip. So, yeah.
And the moves it made. So we saw big steps in technology. We saw big steps in weapon development, and how that pushes forward and how that becomes a part of our thing. And what I want to talk about now is so we achieved all these things. We got all this stuff. It puts us in this place. But how do we justify it? And with the understanding that it's not for us to justify. We didn't sign the paper. The government signed the paper. So,
but like honestly, reading the book, like it wasn't like the whole entire government was on board with this. Like there was portions of the government were like, no, we're not doing this, and then like I said, individuals within those ranks were like, nah, f you, I'm gonna do it anyway. Like the totally undermined like their superiors, like almost like every corner of the way. Reading through the book, like it wasn't like I said, like the whole entire U.S. government wasn't like on board with this. Like they were like, yeah, no, we have no Nazis over here. We ended Operation Paperclip like years ago. Like we're not doing it anymore until like stuff started springing up here and there.
And so the CIA, which was born right about the same time that Paperclip was happening,
right?
They kind of took on a lot of it. But the Department of Defense had a lot more involvement than I originally had thought, because this has that three-letter agency, feel to it.
Alphabet crew, yeah.
But there's definitely more of the DoD in because they were doing stuff down at Fort Dix in the chemical plant, which was again heavily used by the MK Ultra folks as well. You had Dietrich, not Dix, excuse me.
Yeah, so Camp Dietrich in Maryland, where like, so it's like 10 miles away from where I grew up.
Right.
And like a lot of stuff that happened at Camp Dietrich, now Fort Dietrich, is still classified to this day. Like people still don't know everything that happened there, which is like, dude, what's like? It's crazy, man. Like every kind of like disease or virus was like designed like during this period, including like Agent Orange, things of those nature. Like the bubonic plague was weaponized there at Camp Dietrich, or potentially weaponized due to Operation Paperclip, which is, like I said, it's mind-boggling, man.
Yeah, and they brought over, I don't remember his name, but they brought over a specific virologist to work that stuff, and it wasn't. I don't have him on my list. One of the lesser known guys, but and not as dramatic a Nazi connection, but definitely one, still an IG Fabian kind of guy.
Yeah,
that
definitely had involvement.
Yeah, and they play along. There was also a dude that they brought over. That they brought him over. He billed himself as being an expert, and then ended up being like an idiot.
So what,
and they freaking fired his ass.
So this happened a couple times. So literally, like they're rushing so fast to get like scientists over here, that the scientists had friends or whatever that weren't like lawyers and bureaucrats and like that. They're like, dude, you're a scientist, bro. Like, cool, I got your back. So like, yeah, he's totally a scientist, and we didn't have enough time to like actually properly vet because we didn't care. We just wanted the scientist on our side as fast as possible.
Right.
That by the time like the actual investigations came around, we're like, dude, you're not a scientist, bro. You're like a janitor, man. What the hell are you doing here?
Yeah, that was the art that I forget the name, and again, she wrote that the articles were ineffective and poorly written, so they immediately were like, yeah, no, this guy is not who we think he is. He's got to go. He's got to go. But yeah. So what was an aha moment for you? What was like your oh shit moment when you were reading and kind of going through the stuff?
So I know you said that like there was a couple emotional portions for your read where you had to set it down. I didn't react as emotionally to it because while I was doing it, I was like, I already knew this existed. Like, humans are capable of like the most heinous and horrible things imaginable. So it's like, it's obviously I'm not like downplaying what happened whatsoever. And obviously if I were to be there during that time, it would be even more effective and traumatic and all that. Like I have the ability to separate myself from it because it's just text, it's just words on a book. But the only part that actually like kind of bothered me were like, was like, dude, she's so good at writing, man. Was the scene actually, I had to write his name down. So a guy named Hollenrainer, I'm probably fucking his name up. But basically, he was a gypsy priest, and he was one of the lone survivors at Dauchwa. they were doing the saltwater experiments on him, and he was the only survivor of those experiments.
Right. Yep.
At the same time, while they're doing experiments, like they weren't just like feeding him seawater or like making him drink seawater. Like they're also like they cut him open without anesthesia. Started cutting out pieces of his I believe his kidneys. Started testing it here and there while he was still alive, squirming and bleeding all over the place profusely. Right. So during the Nuremberg trials, when they've got all these Nazi scientists and generals and military folks there, since he was the lone survivor of that particular experiment, he's sitting there as like the witness, right? And they have all these scientists line up. They're like, "Hey, do you remember the person that did this to you?" He's like, "Yeah, absolutely." And he sat there and he scanned the room, and it was a guy that I think they only mentioned him in this particular instance. His name is Beigel Bulk. So when he spotted him, he started walking slowly up to him, and he somehow had hidden a knife within his jacket, his pocket, whatever. He started walking up to him slowly, feigning just like, all right, I'm kind of checking out who it was. But at a moment's notice, he leaps into the air with his knife and tries to stab Buckelbach and kill him. Right? And while he does this, he's obviously tackled to the ground, this and that. And the judge reprimands him and pretty much scolds him, like in front of his the people that tortured him, man.
Right.
And he's like, this is not part of democracy. This is not part of how we do our trials. You're just as barbaric as they are if you do this, right? And of course he goes and he cowers a little bit. He's like, I'm sorry, kind of like shoes shines, looking at his shoes and does this thing. And the judge has no sympathy for him. He says, I'll sentence you for 90 days in prison. I'm going to put you in the same prison with your torturers, like the same prison, no separation. Right. And I was like, and I guess like there's people in the courtroom, like people like bawling because they felt for this guy. They wanted to see him kill these Nazis. Like they're like, deep down, you're like, dude, you wanted to see him, even if it's not the right answer. Like I said, there's a lot of gray areas with morality and all these situations. Is that the right answer? No, but is it vindication? I'd say so. If I was in that shoes, if I was still alive during that and I had a chance to do it, like, who the heck wouldn't? But that was like the most emotional I got reading it, was just like that. It was like 12 pages or something, but the whole entire. But luckily, like he didn't stay in prison. Dr. Alexander, got him on bail like within the first day. He was like, dude, you're good, you're out of here. So I convinced the judge to do that. So, but yeah, that was the biggest thing that hit me about it. Like I said, that was the most emotional part. The most surprising part was what I just said before with Schlick, with the uranium that they found on the submarine that might have gone to Japan. Like I had no idea that even happened.
Yeah, for me it was Bloma, like, because she paints him in such a dark picture, and he is like, he's a bad dude. He's a super bad dude, and I remember just thinking, there's no way, because he was convicted. Yeah. He went to prison for war crimes. Yeah. So it's on the record. There's pictures, there's video, maybe not video, but there's pictures, there's transcripts, there's documentation that this guy is an ardent Nazi. He is a bad guy. There's no way possible that we are going to employ him and bring him to the States. Now, the States thing didn't work out, but it's because freaking Private Snuffy checked the wrong box. Right. Not because we weren't going to bring him to the States. Right. The process was in motion. The freaking private just fucked up the paperwork. Right. And that moment where I was like, we still gave him a contract. We still paid him for services. Yeah. Well, and he was also part of MK Ultra. And there had to be people present. There had to be soldiers in the mix that, ignorance is bliss, but you have to imagine, or have to think, I do anyway, that stopped. You know what I mean? Like, here are these dudes, and these dudes are in the limelight. They're on TV. They're in the newspaper. They actually ran a presser, and the guys who had darker pasts, they actually kept. This was at was it Wright Field in Ohio? Before they moved them down to Texas. They only brought certain German scientists out who had slightly lighter shades of gray backgrounds than some of the other dudes who were, definitely darker. And the okie doke, somewhere eventually somebody had to know. Somebody had to know that this was happening and that their country brought the people who legitimately, and they were brought to the States before the barrels had even had time to cool on the guns.
Yeah, it was like within like I said, like over in Nordhausen in the Middleworks, while the Russians were coming in, like the war had just ended. Like it was from the very day, I think it was like slightly before the end of the war, Starver had already started working on how to get those V2 rocket plans as soon as he took over Middleworks there. And literally, like up to like the 11th hour before the Russians moved in, like he was still getting plans and doing this and like moving around and taking like sitting in like one-seater fighter like jets from France back to Germany, like going in the cockpit like nose hole and just squeezing and just trying to like make time. Like, dude, it's insanity.
Yeah, and the whole while they're just kind of waving off and just like, okay, this is okay, and I don't get it, and it makes me nervous, and it bothers me because I hold our country in a high regard, and to see that they are able to take sacrifices and principles and values for the sake of technology and weapons, although no doubt in my mind that they're completely capable of it and do it probably still in the regular. You know what I mean? Yeah. That pretty picture that sits there, the country behind the flag. That was a kick right in the nuts. And not so much, because I think the government did shady shit. If at this point you don't think the government does shady shit, I need to take whatever drugs you're taking or go on whatever island you're hiding on, because that's a happy place I'd like to be on. But I think in the aspect of the soldiers, the dudes who were legit there, not the doctors, not the people in the offices, not the people in the intelligence agencies, not the folks who flew over, stayed in a castle, right, and made day trips out to go find bad guys, right? I'm talking about the dudes who sat there at the Battle of the Bulge, that froze their ass off, that watched their buddies get blown into pieces, that, you know what I mean? These dudes, the soldiers who fought the war, now have to come home and see the people who built the weapons that caused them such incredible physical, emotional pain, that took sons and daughters away from their parents, that took husbands away, took fathers away, and mothers, you know what I mean? And now these dudes who built the weapons that did these things are in positions of celebrity. They're fucking celebrities.
Still to this day, though.
It's like gross. Said, right? Yeah, it's fucking gross.
So going back to celebrities and von Braun, bringing up what you kind of like touching on what you just said, there's also a scene in the book that she paints while von Braun is being taken from, I believe, from Fort Strong down to Texas, down to Fort Bliss. He's riding a train down there, right? And inadvertently, he gets stuck in a cart full of wounded 82nd Airborne Division soldiers and also 101st soldiers. And the person that's escorting him over there suddenly realizes, like, oh, shit, there's these wounded soldiers on this train. Not that they're going to recognize this dude, but like he felt like some kind of guilt about it. So he immediately moves him to a different cart away from these soldiers, right? Like, I'm just saying, like, it's so brazenly in your face right there. Like, dude, this dude literally murdered. Just like during this war, like he's one of the opponents, he's one of the heads of the snake, and he's really sitting in your midst right now. Like, if any of them had even gotten a whiff of who that person was or who Von Braun was, like, there's no doubt in my mind that every person on that train, on that cart, would have hopped and just, like, annihilated the dude. There would have been no stopping them, man. You know what I mean? And who knows what would have happened, but yeah, I mean, it is an interesting part. The end of that story when he goes to another cart, Von Braun is just he's a notorious liar, and a good liar at that. He just comes up with stuff and on the top of his head, and he just has stories for days of who he actually is, but he's not.
Well, they treated him like a celebrity when he was at when he was in that castle. When he first got his like cousin turned him in, right?
Yes.
Rode the bicycle down the mountain, said, "Hey, these guys are up here," and da 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 da. And and then they come down the mountain, they get taken captive, quote unquote, and he is now taking pictures with soldiers, and they're, he takes on this like celebrity persona inside this camp, off the get-go. And you have to wonder, man, like, did they fucking know? Like, who did they think this guy really was, and what was his position?
They couldn't have. There's no way.
And then,
but like the only thing is like also like he must have had a really apparent German accent. Like there's no way he just like chopped that off and also developed a British or American accent overnight. Like it was clear this dude was a German at some sort.
Right.
So you think there'd been some kind of skepticism or like suspicion of the people around him, but she didn't write about it, as far as I know.
No, like his language and dialect and all that stuff, I did not know that we had Heinrich Himmler in captivity.
Really?
I did not know that story until I read that just in the book. The fact that he disguised himself as some sergeant.
Yeah, I don't remember that part at all.
Yeah. So he disguised himself as some sergeant. The SS, the bad guy, the guy who definitely would have been killed at the Nuremberg trials. He would have been executed, probably first for the horrendous things that he did. So he posed as a sergeant, then comes out, outs himself and is like, hell yeah, no, I'm Himmler. I'm Himmler. And then as they immediately grab a hold of him and try to strip search him to make sure that he can't do any, he chomps down, he's got a freaking cyanide capsule in his wisdom teeth and freaking is dead, takes his own life right there in front of everybody before he can get any information. And I would have liked to see him executed, but
yeah, for sure.
But he's no longer an issue, and little stories like that. I know, Paperclip's the kind of resounding thing, but there's just so many little side stories that are fascinating. The young lady who had her shins broken, and she was the one that freaking flipped the tables on, almost destroyed the whole program. And she came over and she's like, nope, this guy's a bad guy. He did this to my leg. Yeah. He was there. I saw his face. He did this to my leg.
Yeah, she was crippled for the rest of her life. And
yeah, they took chunks of her shin bone out.
Yeah, I want to say
and then muscle. Yeah. They tore her calf muscle out. And terrible things. War's gross. And then when you have people like Hitler in charge, it's that much worse. It's fucking gross. But yeah, this was super interesting. To close, though, and I know we're kind of just going in circles at this point, I'm going to ask an if question. So it's 1946, late 40s, early 50s. We are in a completely different place as a nation than we are now. We, at that point in time, we are able to make provisions, exceptions, variances to our espoused beliefs. If we are in today's time, what does Paperclip look like?
What are you alluding to? What do you mean?
Well, I would hope cancel culture would crush the shit out of it, but
I don't know if it would or not, man. So
what's the difference? So if this happens today, in the state that we are in today as a nation, is there anything different? Is there any change? Is there any variance? Or does it legit happen almost the exact same way? And we get freaking these are not the Nazis you're looking for.
I think that, like I said, that was one of the surprising things I drew from it was, I kind of joked around initially. That's when reporters did their job, when they actually questioned the state, when they questioned the overreach, the gross overreach of government. That no longer happens anymore. Cancel culture isn't really concerned about actual things that matter. They're concerned about Mr. Potato Head. You know what I mean? Nobody cares about Mr. Potato Head, but they make it this big deal, and it becomes part of everyone's talking about this thing because every news agency, Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, they're all talking about the same thing, but that crap doesn't matter. Like, dude, there's way worse things happening in the country, and it's like I know it's really cliche, but it's a distraction. Like I said, I think if this happened today, I don't think any of this information. I wouldn't even like the minor breaks and like the journalists asking these, calling up Schreiber like, "Hey, are you the bad guy?" That kind of stuff. That would have never happened, man. They would have been like, "No, the state wants to do it. They are the cathedral. We will not. They will not challenge the cathedral. We will not challenge the new religion of the state government." And that's where I think we are at least heading. We're not quite there because there's quite a few of us that still oppose that. Maybe not as vocally because we're not able to. And that's another like gray area too. As far as all this stuff, it's just like there's no question that what the scientists did were horrible, right? But I don't know what it was like to live back then. I don't know what it was like to live in Nazi Germany. I don't know if these scientists were were they forced by gunpoint to do this initially? Like, did they really believe in what they believe? Because who knows if they did or not? Because they flip-flop whichever way the wind was going, whichever way the wind was like, all right, that's definitely the best way to go. They soared in that direction. You know what I mean? Like they weren't a flagpole that were just sitting there that they couldn't move. Like that they were the actual flag that would move around whatever direction the wind was going. But that's, like I said, I think we all like to believe in our head that we'd be the good guy. We'd be the good guy. Be like, hey, you want to threaten me, my family with murder unless I do these horrible atrocities? I would never do that. I would sacrifice myself and my family for my morals. But at the end of the day, nobody knows what decision they'd make unless they're actually. I'm not defending them. Don't twist my words up. I'm just thinking analytically about this, not emotionally, dude. Totally, I don't know, man. Like I said, there's so much gray area in all of this, and it's like I said, it's not that I read it and I wasn't disgusted or whatever, man. But it's that was what I took away from it. Was pretty much that, man.
I think a lot of these folks knowingly took on the tasks. They were paid well. I think they made the sacrifices. I think they adopted the views that were presented to them through, the Nazi regime, and they believed it. So the Nazification process happened. I don't think there may be cases of 1 and 2, the onesies and twosies, that they were threatened by violence to perform a task, and they performed that task under the threat of violence. And that's a great, that's a great what if question that you can't answer. You cannot answer because you don't know what you would do when there's a gun pointed at your kid's head saying, if you don't do this, we're going to kill your children. Yeah, dude, I would like to think that I have the moral strength to know, to make the right decision there, but I can't tell you that, I'm choosing this. I can't tell you that because the safety of my kids, that is, and I'm not, again, and I'm with you.
As fuck, but
and we're not. I'm not, again, the Nazis were fucking terrible. I hope they all have this very special place in hell for, eternity. And, Satan gets to freaking poke them all day long. And for the onesies and twosies. But I do honestly believe that the majority of them knowingly made those decisions. They made those decisions because of the financial or societal gain that it gave them. And not so much as under the threat of violence.
But another takeaway from this too is these scientists, they weren't I don't, maybe I'm just talking on my butt right now, but freaking they weren't the only scientists in the country. You know what I mean? There was probably thousands and thousands of scientists that refused to join the SS or the Nazi regime and didn't contribute to the war machine whatsoever. But I don't know particularly because I'm not didn't read that book, but I don't know what happened to those people, if those people do exist or did exist back then. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because that could be a case where hey, 3,000 people refused to join the Nazi Party and they were murdered, but I don't know, man. So I don't know, man. I'm not defending him whatsoever. Whatever.
Right.
I'm just like, dude, just like the whole entire situation is great. Even like the bringing them over here. All right, let's say as a country, we did the right thing, right? We denied all their visas. We're like, nope, we're hanging every single one of you. You're going up all the 13 steps in the gallows and being hung by the noose with 13 threads in it. You know, it's all symbolic, which was crazy too. But anyway, like we all want to believe if that happened, right? We would have just totally just like, we don't need your research. We don't need that. We can do our own thing. And Russians did what they did. Who can say that they wouldn't have dropped an atomic bomb on us or killed us? Like, that's the whole point of the Cold War. It kept building up. If there was nothing on our side and they kept doing what they were doing, like, who's to say they want to pull the trigger and become, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's all what ifs, like you said at the very beginning. And all we can really do is be like, who knows, man? The present is the present, past is the past, and who knows what's coming up tomorrow.
Yeah. There's still a lot of documents from Operation Paperclip that are classified, which I found to be interesting. So here we are, we're, over 50 years later. What information do they have that can be of significant national security today from 1945? So looking at the technological advances and all this shit that where we are, that was one of the things where I was really scratching my head, like, why? What is in these documents that is so heavy and so that still poses a threat to national security today? And again, just left to speculate because we don't know, because they're classified. We can't get a hold of them. We can't read them. We can't see them.
Redacted.
Not even redacted. Like, they're not even going to give us and if the, right? They're not giving us anything. Like, no, straight up no. So I would be interested to see what those have to say and why those are still in that position that they are. And we may get the insight to that here by June 1st.
That's a possibility.
When all of a sudden, all the pictures of Area 51 come out and we see little green guys, freaking George Lucas got it right. A bunch of Yodas running around doing flips with lightsabers.
Yeah,
and shit.
Right.
That's what I'm hoping for, man.
He was part of Operation Paperclip the whole time.
Oh,
That's
the
how
whole time.
It's like him with Star Wars, man.
Yeah.
He went to Camp Dietrich and went to Area 51. He's like, dude, this is killer. Nah.
Yoda's everywhere. Right on, man. All right. Well, I think we've covered, man. We've covered a lot. We've talked about a lot, and we've only really, honestly, we just scratched the surface. So go check this out for yourself. Total Research will be up on the show notes for you to go and peruse or not if you would like. I would strongly recommend that you go check out Annie Jacobson's book. It is called Operation Paperclip. Oh boy, there's that whiskey. Operation Paperclip, the secret intelligence program that brought Nazi scientists to America. And you'll get a much broader picture of what exactly went down. Jesse, thank you once again, my friend, for joining me tonight for our very first ever live, being a good sport and
all day
going out there and talking about this crazy thing. So, to wrap us up, America was able to put away its morality for success in science and weapon technology. I've been trying to answer the question why. I can't. Before the barrels were cool on our guns, we were shipping Nazis back to the U.S., not as prisoners, but as employees. And I personally think that's gross. So, my friends, from the bar of questionable life choices, I'm Ian. That's Jesse. This is Why Whiskey. Have a good night. We'll talk to you later. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. As always, if you have any comments, questions, or would like to join me for our questionable life choices for an episode, hit me up on email at onewhiskeyhistory@gmail.com. Cheers.